How do good white people perpetuate racism? Let's talk about it. I recently made a post on Instagram that triggered up some interesting comments, and I feel like they serve as good examples of the way that well intentioned, kind, nice, good white people uh, continue the vicious cycle of racism, and without any awareness of it. They're not trying to be mean. They don't want to be racist. They want to be good people, but they don't want to actually do the work to examine all the subtleties of what racism is. And they get caught up in just defending and being like, no, I'm a good person. I'm not a racist. I am not bad. Don't make me bad. You're making me bad. I feel defensive now. Like that type of energy is kind of how I take it. Sorry if the people who I'm talking about feel mocked right now. But come on, a little comedy, a little humor. Lighten up. So let's maybe just start by reading what the original post was. So the original post says, in order to explore, identify, and dismantle our racist and judgmental beliefs, we need the defensive parts that scream, but I'm a good person, to take a step back. All right? And so to me, that's, I guess now I've evolved enough that like makes sense. I hear that. I'm like, oh yeah, duh. But if I'm going to sympathize with the people who are having a bad reaction to this post, I have to go back into where I was, like kind of my default setting as someone who grew up white passing, who had all the, kind of experience of the white lifestyle and being part of the group of people who were like, we're not racist. Like, we know that racism is bad and we don't want to be part of it. And, we're not racist, we're good people. Like, I was very much there, and it wasn't until my wife started her own anti-racism work and started to notice the white supremacy within herself, and then see that I was also having so many different ways that I was perpetuating the white supremacy and racism and so on, things that we weren't aware of. So it's, this is the point. It's unconscious, these implicit bias. It's these kind of deeper programs that we don't even realize are functioning, right? And so the goal is to get in there and weed those out. And you can't really weed those out if your defensiveness is just putting up a wall saying, no, they don't exist because I'm a good person, right? And here's the thing. I know a lot of good people. I've traveled the world. I've spent time with good people in all races, all cultures, all countries, not every country, but like, samplings of all different parts of the world. And I haven't just like seen people, like I've sat down and done like deep conversation with people, running groups, all like, dove into it. And I've been with really amazing people, Nobel Peace Prize winners and wonderful activists and people who are organizing their community. And I don't think there's a single person I've met who doesn't have some of this subtle racism in them, even the best people I've met. So I think that's kind of where part of where I'm coming from at this, that kind of triggers people up, is that if we understand what racism is and we expand our definition beyond just, someone who's wearing a KKK hood or someone who's like going out calling people the N-word or whatever, and go into the understandings of these subtler forms of racism and the ways that it is perpetuated, then we realize that, like, I'm a racist, you're a racist, all of the best people that are racist as well. And it's not supposed to be an insult. Like, I understand this, again, this is language. Language has different meanings. No one has the same understanding of the word. Even if we have a dictionary definition, doesn't mean that when I say the word, you see it the same way I do. But the term racism or being called a racist is like an insult. It's like being called a pedophile or something. So people get very defensive about it. But I'm saying the good news is it's like, it's not a bad thing. It's like, you're a racist, I'm a racist, we're all racist because we all have this racist programming inside of us. So we don't have to be freaked out that we're a racist. We can just accept the fact that we have racism in us. We have sexism in us. We have patriarchy in us. We have all of these programs in us. because we are humans who exist on planet Earth in this era, this time, and these are ideologies and belief systems that have spread out through the social fabric of the entire planet. So you're a human, you've been subjected to it, you've got some of it in you, and you're not a bad person because you have it. And that's not the point. It's not to make you feel bad. The point is to recognize it's there so that you can clean it out and stop being part of perpetuating the cycle of racism or the cycle of sexism or whatever it is that we're going to work on rooting out. Let me kind of share with you the first. Well, let me actually first. That was the meme that I read. Let me now read the caption that was written by someone else. It wasn't me. Reposted from Britt Frank, and Britt Frank wrote, "Our internal systems are made up of infinite parts, subparts, shadow parts, and generationally traumatized parts." This is good. We're talking about like all this stuff that's inside of us, what we are made of. In order for white people to create internal change, it can be helpful to ask our defensive parts that scream, "But I'm a good person," to take a step back so we can do the work that needs doing. Good people can cause trauma. Good people can create wounds. Good people can have racist parts. We need to work with our protective systems in a non-shaming way. This allows us to get beyond their defenses and harness the necessary mobility to create change. Great, caption here. Now, the first comment that I got, there was this kind of retaliation of people not liking this, and I think a really good example of what we're talking about. Like this person embodied it. It's funny. So Trump. Let me read their comment. This is Sophistry Chan 25. I don't know anything about him. His profile is private, but seems like a nice white guy. He says the term racist is being applied in too many and too broad of circumstances. Most people, by the correct standard definition, are not racist. They take offense when they are labeled as such, and they are absolutely correct to push back against that. So, this is, first off, how I used to reply. When my wife first came to me and was like, "Hey, you got some racism in you," and I was like, don't call me racist. That's not the right way to determine it. You're not using your terms properly. Racism is defined this way, and when you say that to me, I have a right to push back against it. And all this type of stuff. So I get where this guy's coming from. I was there once, but let's first look at two things. First off, the original post was just saying, in order to explore, identify, and dismantle our racist and judgmental beliefs, we need the defensive parts that scream, "But I'm a good person," to take a step back. And he went straight into saying the term racist is being applied in too many and too broad of circumstances. So, instead of wanting to work with him going, okay, what's inside of me that might have a tinge of racism, he went directly into, we have to look at the term. You're using the term in a way that's not okay. And so let's get into this a little bit, because there's the discussion of words, terms. Like you try and get into like, this is the dictionary definition. I mean, racism has evolved over time. It doesn't have one meaning. It has like contextual meaning. Words have contextual meanings. They don't have just like one defined way. So when you get caught up in arguing like, no, this is the way that the word goes, you're missing the point. You're not actually, it's like, okay, we'll use whatever word you want to use. If you prefer implicit bias, if you prefer prejudice, if you prefer whatever it is, discrimination, whatever softer word that doesn't have the baggage of the word being called a racist that you want to use, that's fine. As long as you're willing to get into doing the work and examining in yourself. To me, it doesn't matter. I prefer to use the more blunt words, because one way that we avoid doing the work and avoid changing is by using softeners. We soften and make things not as bad so that we don't actually have to deal with it. It's like, oh, yeah, I just have like a little bit of discrimination. I was being a little bit of discrimination, but it doesn't mean I'm racist, and it doesn't mean I'm bad and all this. And so it's just a little bit of discrimination. It's not that pressing. It's not that big of an issue. I don't need to really deal with that right now. Or if you're like, this is racist and it actually perpetuates the racism, and this system of racism is leading to people like George Floyd being killed on the street, maybe I should do something about it. Maybe it's a little bit more urgent. Maybe if I'm recognizing that I am part of the racism, then I would be more interested in taking action. So I like the more blunt language, but it's not necessary. All that matters is you just got to understand what's going on, understand the concepts, and dig into what's happening inside of us. So, he made his little defensiveness, and the funny thing is, in the caption, it specifically says this allows us to get beyond their defenses and harness the necessary mobility to create change. So we got to work with our protective systems. Our protective systems, that's the part that says, I'm a good person. I don't want to look at anything that could be bad about me. That's the protective system. That's the defensiveness. And I think that this guy's comment was a perfect example of that defensiveness. And so I replied and I said, this is the time for us to expand our understanding of racism. And this type of defensiveness, while understandable, is what holds us back. So I'm saying your post has defensiveness, because this didn't even say, like, define what racism is. It didn't, he's saying racist is being used in too broad of a term. This wasn't even saying that. It was just saying, if someone who has racist beliefs is going to look inside, they have to drop the defensiveness. And he went straight into defending, So he replied, I'm not defensive at all, and the issue of terminology has nothing to do with my feelings. It's a matter of clarity and definitions. If we apply the term to such a broad set of people and beliefs, it loses its meaning. Okay, so let's kind of talk about meaning of racism. Now, I was just doing a little research here. Wikipedia was saying that racists, like being called a racist, kind of developed in like the civil rights time, the 60s, 70s time. Before that, it was more, people would say you're being prejudiced. And then prejudice became into this new word of racist, and then it had this connotation of like racist is like these prejudiced people that were like protesting against, and like now it's got this negative, bad vibe to it. And it also had a very active vibe to it, that racist means I am going and doing stuff like I'm acting out my discrimination, my prejudice against this other group, and I am acting out my superiority. I'm like running the lynch mob. I am, kicking this person out of my shop. I am, harassing this person on the street. I am calling them names. And so there's this more active component to the racism. Then, as time has evolved, we've come to understand that you don't have to be an active racist to be part of racism. And this is what we call complicit racism. And to a certain degree, you can like feel good towards people of other color. You can have no negative feelings towards them. You can have no heart palpitations when you see a black man in a hoodie in the store and get a little nervous. I think there was this classic Louis C.K. line where he was like, I'm not racist, but I'm a little bit racist. Because when I see the black guy in the store with a hoodie, I get a little bit nervous. And then I go, wow, why was I nervous? Like, because I'm a little bit racist. But like, that's just like the little, subtle thing. But you might not even have that. That might not even be part of it. But you benefit from the racist systems as a white person, say, as a white male like me, white passing male like me. You can be benefiting from these systems and doing nothing to speak out against these systems, to change these systems. That would be complicit racism, right? So, there's a lot of subtle ways that we can be racist. So this is kind of the new understanding, is that there's the active racism and there's the complicit racism. And that's why there's a new push for anti-racism, because that is when you actually go beyond, like a complicit racist can be like, I'm not going to say anything mean to black people, I don't feel bad about them or whatever, but still be complicitly part of it and perpetuating the system. And anti-racist is actively trying to dismantle the racist systems. And that's what we're being called to step up into this anti-racist role, rather than staying within the active racist or the complicit racist. And, basically the majority of us fall into complicit racist. And again, that's just because we all grew up as humans on this planet where white supremacy is just a key, like, foundational way that the world is like seen. It's why you get things like India and, you know, in Asia and so on, and even in Africa and stuff, the lightening of the skin. You know, I'm watching commercials when I was living in Delhi, and all these skin whitening products are coming on. I'm like, why are they trying so hard to be white, you know? And it was kind of, I was young at the time, didn't fully get it, but like you can see all these little things where this kind of white supremacy has like permeated into our cultures, into our beliefs, and not just in like the skin color element, but, you know, the white way of doing things, the white medical system, the white education system, the white way of, you know, housing, like everything about like the white way is the right way. It's the superior way, and that permeates so many of us. And also, it's not just white people who have it in them. You know, it's all of us, people of color. I mean, they've done really interesting studies where they brought black people in to do like math tests, basically. But before they did the math test, they sat them in a waiting room, and then they primed them by having a TV playing. And for one group of these black people, the priming TV was showing news clippings about this black criminal and that black criminal and all these like negative things about black people to kind of, you know, kind of remind all those negative stereotypes. And then the other group was getting footage of Martin Luther King speaking and inspiring, you know, smart black people, showing them. So then they go in and take the test, and the black people who saw these negative images of themselves went in and did more poorly on the test than the people who saw the positive images. And so it just shows that it's not just like a white thing, you know, white people towards black people. You know, we all have like racist and prejudice and all these things, and these biases. It's all there inside of us, and we do it against ourselves, and it's very deeply programmed. So let's get back into the comments, because then we got a new person who jumped in. Live and Grow Therapy seems like a very nice white lady, really nice posts on her page, and she's trying to speak very kindly, but she came in very intensely because basically I had you know, continued to push back, saying, you know, check your defensiveness and learn more deeply about what racism is. And she came in and said, assuming that all individuals that share a different point of view on the subject are racist or part of racist defensiveness is a very big problem, because the conversation about identification and acknowledgement people's actual racist attitudes stops because they feel attacked over being portrayed as something they do not feel they are. And of course, a big group of people are racist and another big group are not. The world is not black and white, and we should be careful with identifying it in these terms because the risk of polarization is very high. So I get it. So this is, again, coming from the more old definition of racism, of someone who's more of an active racist, or like a more blatant complicit racist, you know, someone who is not just on like having the very subtlest forms of racism, but like they're not active, but they're kind of still racist, you know, the prejudice is there. And she's saying, you know, if we want to get people to recognize their internal stuff, we can't say anything that'll make them feel defensive, which is, you know, it's not a bad point. I agree with it. And that's why I said earlier, I'm okay with softeners. I'm okay with speaking to people at where they're at. But my personal style for myself, and that I prefer to work with people at, is being more blunt, being more honest, not trying to soften things. But yeah, it's okay. You want to be a little bit softer and not make people have to deal with the fact that they're racist right away, you know, and help them kind of ease into it. That's fine. But I think there's what her post also really makes clear is just a kind of like a lack of understanding of what the subtleties of racism are. Because, as she says, there's this big group of people who are not racist. And if we understand the complicit racism, and we understand how the programming works and the way that culture and all these things get ingrained into us into ways that are implicit, that are unaware, they're unconscious, then it's very easy to understand how, we're pretty much all in the bag of complicit racists at least. And so for her to be making this big case that no, 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 there's some racist people, but most of us are good. Most of us are not racist. This is the defensiveness. So this is a good illustration. It's her basically saying, but I'm a good person. But this group of people, they are good people. We are good people. And it's not saying that you're not a good person. I guess that's my main point that I keep trying to get across, and I feel like people don't want to hear because they're so caught up getting defensive and that this word offends them and they don't want to be labeled that. It's not that you're not a good person. It's just that you have, implicit biases, that you have these deep programming that you are not aware of, and it's time to dig into it. And like I said in the beginning, to me, it's good news. It's easier to be like, oh, okay, good. I'm a racist. You're a racist. We're all racist. We're all biased. We're all prejudiced. We all have these things. And now it's not about being upset about that or defensive about that. It's our time to actually sit with what's actually there, be honest about it, and then figure out how it got programmed in there, work on releasing it, and not letting it run us anymore, not letting it be unconscious script in our psyche that dictates our behavior. So, yeah, I think that's kind of my rant. I do find it pretty interesting the way that these people just keep, no matter, I've kind of said basically what I've been saying here. I was hoping I could maybe clarify a bit by making this video. But I don't think that anything I've said here is going to change their mind. And that's okay. They're not at the place where they're ready to grow yet. Like, that's the thing. When you're ready to grow, then you can hear these things and then you grow from them. When you're not ready to grow, you hear this stuff and you just get defensive. And then you say, I'm not being defensive. I am just talking about the term. I am being the term has to be right and everything like that. And this is, avoiding the actual work because you want to spend your time in the term rather than going in and being like, okay, what do I need to dismantle within myself? And it's hard. No one wants to do that. No one wants to face the bullshit inside of us. No one wants to do the shadow work. And I get it. Like, I sympathize. But I can't, let you off the hook just because you don't want to do the work, I'm not going to force you to. It's your choice. And if you're in that place where you want to do the work and you feel like I can be helpful to you, I'm happy to help. But don't show up on my page and be defensive and be a perfect example of the thing we're highlighting in the post, and then expect me to just let you walk away with it without me saying, here, you're kind of doing what we're talking about, right? So I hope that was helpful to some people. It's just my rant on this topic. And, I'll hopefully make some more things like this when things come up. It was funny. Another element was, I just said, it takes too long to try and battle this out in the comments. I don't have time. I got other shit to do. So I made this video because it's a lot easier for me to try and say all that shit I just said, just rambling off in front of the camera rather than trying to type it out and everything like that. So when these things happen, when people make these types of posts and react to my stuff, I'm going to try and use these videos as a way to, dive deeper and educate. And I don't know, I think most people, at least so far, are not watching to the end of my videos, which I understand they're long and me rambling. But over time, hopefully these will get better and become more useful. And if you're enjoying them, if you're getting benefit, please let me know with a like, comment, message, whatever you want to do. It helps, feedback, comments, things that you think would be better, ways that I could present my message better. I'm very interested in hearing, even interested in hearing these people who are sharing their disagreement and putting their defensiveness on display and don't want to hear what I have to say, but hey, it gives me an opportunity to talk about it and gives me a reminder of what it was like when I was like that. And so, yeah, I think we all benefit from the conversation, and I hope you benefited from listening to this ramble.